Welcome back to Dorm Room History with a player named Gus.
Oh,
Wouldn't that be sick if we had Psych on our show?
if we had Gus on here,
If we had Gus from Psych.
we'd just make him do the intro, then we kick him out.
Yeah. Anyway, Jake and Jackie.
Chicken jockey.
If you're a visual viewer, that will make sense to you because you'll know what's hanging behind me right now. But if you're not, then unfortunately you have no idea what's hanging behind me right
I wonder
now.
if we can just turn this whole thing into a reel that starts with that, and then people will just be like caught onto it. They'll just watch.
Jake and Jackie.
Chicken jockey.
Anyways, welcome to the Dorm Room History Podcast.
Welcome.
As per usual, today we're going to present to you a little podcast.
Hmm.
Nothing changed since last week.
How nice and quaint.
In terms of the plan. So yeah, get excited for that. Obviously everyone knows that usually what we do at first is
This day in history.
this day in history. That's right.
Is
This day in history.
this day in history.
And the reason we do that is because one time we decided we were going to do this podcast and we just pitched this as something we could do at the beginning of the podcast. Since
And then we didn't really even like decide on it. We just started doing it, and then it's a tradition now.
Yeah.
Our tens of fans love it.
Yeah. So listen, here's the deal. This week in history, I can't lie, I couldn't find much that was super dope. But what was cool is in 1722, the
Mhm.
Dutch navigator Jacob Roggeveen is the first European to discover Easter Island in the Southeast Pacific.
How about that?
And we all know what's on there.
Those heads.
Those heads, which also they found out there's bodies with them too, didn't they recently?
No, I don't think that's true.
Really? I thought they excavated and there were some bodies under there.
Maybe that would be crazy. But
Not.
no, the purpose of those. Well, actually, we're going to be talking about that a little bit today, even.
Mm-hmm.
But the purpose of those heads is to say like where it marks the sources of water where they usually show up.
Oh.
So, or one of the proposed theories. They didn't write. The people over there didn't write. But
Right.
also, did you know the original name of Easter Island was Rapa Nui?
Oh. Rapa Nui.
Rapa Nui.
That sounds like Metro Nui, which is an island for the Bionicles where they live on.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Dude, I'm sure that's where it came from then.
Really?
Probably, right?
Yeah, Rapa Nui, Metro Nui. They probably got Easter Island from the Bionicles.
There's a bunch of islands like that in the Pacific though that just have different names since we changed them. So
Interesting.
like New Zealand.
Well,
is a
yeah,
cool one.
everyone go watch the Bionicle movies. They're all really good. You have the Toa and the Minitones.
There's no competing movies out right now
No.
that you should watch instead.
Jake and Jackie. All right. Another one that I'll just cover real quick because we did talk about this recently, actually. 1453, sorry. Turkish forces under Sultan Mehmed II began siege of the Byzantine Empire, capital of Constantinople.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was a big turning point in history.
Which falls May 29th. So
Dang.
you'll remember that. We talked about it recently. It's happening this week. So
It's coming up.
Yep.
May
So
29th
anyway,
or March 29th?
May 29th is when it falls, is what it says.
Oh, okay, but the siege begins.
Begins this week on the
Okay. Actually, pretty quick siege.
pretty fast. Yeah, it didn't last long. Begins April 6th.
Well, the Ottomans figured out, they're like, why don't we just use guns? And then it made everything way quicker.
That was actually the hack, as it turns out. It's like when you mod your Minecraft to have guns and everything's just way too easy.
We've been doing the hack ever since.
Yeah, in case anyone's wondering what that's similar to. Well, yeah, so clearly the next step in this podcast for everyone that's been following along for a while, you know the steps. It's like when you have children, for everyone that can relate to that, because I checked and our audience is 98% 18 to 22-year-olds.
We have one 65-year-old plus
We did
listener,
check
though.
that out, yeah.
So
So
that's
shout out our
exciting.
60-plus listener.
Yep.
But for those, you have kids and you help them brush their teeth every night, eventually they know the steps themselves. And you
Mhm.
just have to ask them what the next step is.
Yeah.
So what's the next step in the podcast? Main topic.
The next step of the
next step in the
podcast.
They didn't answer.
Yeah. We're gonna go through and debunk some myths
Oh.
that you probably have heard throughout your entire life.
Yeah.
And the myths we're gonna debunk are about America.
Okay.
Okay, but ancient America before the United States of America was a
okay.
country.
I was thinking
here.
This Is America by Childish Gambino.
We're just gonna debunk that music video.
Okay.
10 Easter eggs you didn't see while
First
watching.
of all, no one can dance like that.
First of all, why did he choose to dance like that?
Second myth, guns don't actually kill you
Right.
if you get shot by them.
Guns don't kill people.
Mm-hmm.
We're all
Childish
immune to
Gambino.
bullets.
Childish Gambino kills people
Okay.
in his music video.
In that
This Is
video, he did.
America. Third myth, you can't dance on top of cars like that. The roof bends.
Yeah, well, no, I've done it before.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Dude, one time in high school, this is really off topic, but one time in high school, me and my friends strapped a mattress to the top of my mom's minivan
Mm-hmm.
and then just like rode around it while we were like, let's take a nap while someone drives it around. But you can't take a nap when you're on top of it. So really what happened is like, we're just strapped to this, we're on top of the mattress, just holding on for dear life.
Were you trying to take a nap though? Because I just imagine you like up there like trying to fall asleep, but you're like, it's not working, guys.
I have a picture of me doing it.
Dang.
So we called it bed car.
Bed.
And really,
Oh, that's a good name
really
for it.
creative name.
Because low key, that is what it was.
There's no questions about what we were doing.
It was the bed car, man. Come on.
But we're going to debunk some myths about America. And this is going to be a little bit similar to, I guess, the soapbox that I got on last podcast about
Okay,
just
here we
how
go.
everybody's equal.
Get excited.
I know it's a crazy soapbox to be on, but
Dude, shut up about equality. My goodness.
just because you have a certain skin color doesn't mean you're different than everybody else.
Okay.
Just because you're from a certain place doesn't mean you're different than everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's the same, and everybody's actually really smart. One of my favorite stories that proves this is when the Spanish conquered.
Except for people that burn their marshmallows on purpose when they're trying to make
Why do
s'mores.
you do that?
They're not smart.
Why do you
and
do
you're
that?
different than everyone else. And you should stop listening.
Well, good thing we don't have that country in our podcast.
Yeah. Okay, but keep going.
This one story that I really love that proves this point is when the Spanish had conquered much of America early on. Each town of Native Americans or Native Indians or indigenous people is the PC way. But I actually met some indigenous people who they were like, we really like to be called Indians because when America gave us our land, the contract had the word Indians in it, so we like to be called Indians. So I don't know what to call them at this point now.
But that people you met, they were
They
chill with that.
like to be called Indians. They actually
Okay.
preferred it, but the PC term technically you have to put in history papers is indigenous people. But
Okay.
anyway, there were some indigenous people in the Americas.
Mhm.
They lived in their little villages and were under the Spanish rule, and each village had their own Spanish priest that was sent there to like govern the town. And if you didn't like the Spanish priest, one of the towns figured out is you could just accuse him of sexual assault, even if he didn't do it. And then the Spanish monarchy was like, shoot,
Dude.
well, I guess like we'll just swap them out. And then that one town started writing letters to all the other towns like, hey, this is what you can do if you get like a crappy priest.
That's crazy. They invented Twitter like 200 years ago.
And so they literally just go around like, you get a priest that's more strict on you or doesn't let you do what you want, like you probably did sexual assault.
Damn.
And then the Spanish kick him out and switch him with a new priest that's better.
That's crazy, actually.
And so sometimes we think of these like Native Americans just so like oppressed and like they just didn't know what to do and they're just kind of like, I don't know. Sometimes history teaches you they're like toddlers and the Spanish come over and they're like, whoa, what is a hat? Like I've never seen that before, you know?
Exactly. Like they think everything's magic. Especially early Disney films really
Like Pocahontas
did a
and
lot
stuff.
to help you think of Native Americans that way. I don't know if anyone realizes how racist early Disney films were, but it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. But that's just not the case at all. Like they were super smart. They were clever.
Mm-hmm.
Figuring that kind of stuff out. You can just accuse your priest of assault and then you're good to go.
Listen, humans improvise, adapt, overcome. Bear Grylls.
But yeah, we're going to go through a bunch of different myths that you may have learned about America and just debunk them. Kind of similar to that one and just help everybody understand that just because you're a certain race does not mean that you're any different from anybody else. Right? So we shouldn't be babying or playing with kid gloves with these Native Americans because they were smart. They knew exactly what they were doing.
Yeah.
Sometimes we also have the attitude of like, oh, well, the Native Americans were just so oppressed, and so let's just treat them so nice and say they never did anything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they weren't idiots. Like, they knew how to screw you over. They knew how to, like,
Yeah.
trick you.
They
They knew how to do everything
They taught
everyone
white
else
people
does.
how to farm.
Yeah. There's lots of stuff that we have because of the Native Americans, and they had a lot of power. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll just go through and discuss, I guess, evidences of that kind of thing. But to build up to the Spanish conquest, we got to talk about how the Spanish conquest even happened.
Right.
So there's a couple city-states that last time we visited America that were kind of on the rise. And I say city-states on purpose because there weren't any empires yet.
Mm-hmm.
Empire is when you just, like an empire is when you take over a bunch of land, have multiple cities and multiple ethnicities, and you're ruling over all of them.
Okay.
So this hadn't happened in the Americas. There were a couple city-states that were very powerful. We mentioned Teotihuacan.
Mm-hmm.
We mentioned Tiwanaku, which Tiwanaku, we briefly mentioned it, but it's an Incan city, which means it's in Peru. So a Peruvian city, another Peruvian city called Wari. But there's just these powerful city-states, but no empires yet.
Okay.
The first empires start to come around. We don't know exactly, but probably post 1200s, probably maybe late 1300s, early 1400s.
Okay.
And you get two really, really powerful empires. You have the Aztecs in modern day Mexico, and you have the Incas in modern day Peru. Okay, two vastly powerful empires. We'll start with the Aztecs, just talk a little bit about them. But their capital city was called Tenochtitlan.
Oh.
Don't get that confused with Teotihuacan.
Yeah, Tenochtitlan is different than Teotihuacan.
And like, I'm doing you a favor because one time for this game I was making, I wrote down like the top 7 Aztec cities. Something only that I would do ever.
Yeah, that's true. That is the most Michael activity I've ever heard.
But I wrote down like the top most powerful Aztec cities, and all 7 of them started with a T.
Whoa.
And sounded pretty much the same. So for the purpose of this, just know Teotihuacan, not Aztec. That was pre-Aztec. Tenochtitlan is their capital.
Okay.
Luckily, we'll only have to talk about one more Aztec city before this is over. It sounds the same as well.
Get your little notebook out. Write some of this down.
But Tenochtitlan was a massive city. I wish I could show like a picture. There's a really good like CGI rendition that someone's done online. But just like, it would be incredible being from Europe, coming over the mountains and just seeing just a massive city. And for anyone who doesn't know, Tenochtitlan is exactly where modern day Mexico City is. They just built Mexico City on top of this city.
Yeah. If I remember, I'll put a link to that website in the description where you can see it because it's pretty lit. I know what he's talking about.
Yeah, it's incredible stuff. I actually have like 5 bookmarks on my computer. Like 4 of them are school and one of them's that website.
Just to check it out.
Just whenever I feel like I just go look at it again.
Another thing you guys got to know about Michael is Michael uses a MacBook. And so he's got 2 different desktops on his MacBook. One just got everything on it. And then the other one is just Apple Maps. So he can just look at different places in the world that he's learned about history. So if you're wondering, like, I'm listening to these podcasts by these guys, but I'm not sure if their historian's very dedicated. You got a whole desktop for that joint.
I do. I was looking like... it's always a fun surprise to go look at the map and see what you looked at last. I was looking at Africa because I was helping some students with that. But I moved over to Greece and just checked out some of those islands while we were prepping for this.
Just trying to get an idea of those numbers.
Even though we're not talking about Greece at all, I was just curious.
So I wonder what islands they got over there.
There's a little 3-pronged... This is in Greece. There's a little 3-pronged peninsula that has a really cool name in Greece, and I'm trying to remember what it is. I don't know. Hopefully I'll remember by the time it's over. Sick. But it doesn't matter at all for this podcast.
New GeoGuessr. See if you can go find the 3-pronged island in Greece.
It's a 3-pronged peninsula. Yep, up in northern Greece. Dude, how do I not remember this? It starts like a D.
If Rainbolt watched our podcast, he would know what it was.
Maybe it's on the thing. Maybe there's like it has the name on here. It's by Thessalonica.
This is a good use of time.
I might just have to give up on this. I'll look it up later when we're doing like when Blake's prepping his what's it called, query corner questions.
Yeah.
I'll check it out and I'll let you know. I'm actually disappointed because I should know exactly what that's called.
I mean, we should be getting in a query corner pretty soon here. Technically, I don't know when I'll cut it in, but so maybe very soon you'll get the name. I'm starting query corner right now, dude.
I'm listening.
Okay.
I promised them I'd look this up.
Oh yeah, that's right. You're looking it up. Welcome to Query Corner, everyone. You may notice there's been a set change if you're a visual listener. And so later in the podcast.
Oh, duh, dude. I knew it. The Kakadike.
Oh, the Kakadike. That's the name of the peninsula.
The Kakadike.
Anyway, as I was saying, there's been a set change because we record the Query Corner at the end in case you're wondering, then I cut it in the middle.
Yep.
There's been a set change. So I guess if you're a visual listener, you'll see how that change happened later after this Query Corner. But you may notice that that's over there now.
Guess you'll have to watch till the end.
Oh. It's like the least hook ever. Like no one cares. All right. So coming in hot with our first question. This is one that's very interesting to me. So this comes from Reddit, Ask Historians. Did any rich people buy slaves just to let them go when, during that time in America?
All the time, actually. That was a common thing. Even some places do that today with sex trafficking and stuff. Still a common practice.
Oh, really?
Where you just will go and just have you'll have a, I don't know what, a group, and you just donate everyone will donate money into this pot that this group has, and then they'll pay some sex traffickers for the sex slaves and then just set them free.
Huh. So because it's just in the countries where those people operate, it's just easier to do that than trying to take them down with the law. Huh.
So was a
It's
common
like
practice, still is a common practice.
It's like private equity, but they actually do something good for the world.
There was a lot of people, like a lot of founding fathers who would do it. It's actually a very hotly debated topic. Thomas Jefferson was back and forth on this his whole life. He really struggled with the idea of like, what should I do? What's right to do? Dude, you know what George Washington did actually? He was like, I'll free all my slaves as soon as my wife Martha dies.
Oh.
So like, dude, if I was Martha, I would hate him more than anything else. Like literally, dude, you have the only thing standing between these slaves and their freedom is like me dying.
Oh. There's some motivation there.
I know.
Interesting. Okay. Another question I have.
Mm-hmm.
I thought about this the other day. Okay, so Italy, we know what we now know as Italy, was actually kind of the capital of Rome.
Yes.
Okay. No one speaks Latin anymore.
Uh-huh.
Where the crap did Italian come from? Where did we get friggin' ciao prego? Like, how'd that come from et tu Brutus? Like,
good question. Yeah. Italian is a Romance language, so it comes from Latin originally.
Well, obviously it's Romantic, yeah.
Right. It just is the result of changes in dialects for thousands of years, and also the massive influx of northern barbarians after Rome fell.
Oh, really?
So you have tons of people like the Huns, the Vandals, the Visigoths, and then just northern Germanic people coming into Rome after Rome fell. And like, really, Italy's not going to be a part, barring a few exceptions that are so small you shouldn't really even need to mention them. Italy's not going to become a part of an empire, even a country, really again until like World War I.
Really?
Right? And so that time you should have a bunch of different random like papal states and city states where it's just a huge influx of a cosmopolitan population.
Okay. So basically other populations come in and displace Latin speaking.
Yeah.
Which is how Latin dies. And then eventually all those languages kind of form into
It's basically
Italian.
You get tons of different people coming and they all mix together with the Latin until it becomes Italian.
Oh, interesting.
Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah, that does make sense.
So that's why, I mean, you have mixes of like Northern Europe, German, all sorts of different kinds of languages just mixing with Latin to get Italian.
Yeah. That is interesting because you do like, it makes you think like, what, because like this was one of the largest empires in the world and now we don't even speak their language. Like there's no other empire that was that big that their language doesn't exist
just
anymore.
Gone.
Yeah.
Super interesting. Yeah. But then, I mean, you could also say that like most of the world does speak their language, just a dialect of it. Right? Because if you think about like, I mean, Chinese now is nothing like Chinese was 2,000 years ago. Right? And so you could, I mean, if you wanted to make an argument, I don't know if I'd make this argument, but if you wanted to make an argument that Latin and Spanish and French and Italian are all the same language, you could. And Portuguese. They all come from the same spot, right? Question for Thomas, though. I wonder what he has to say about that.
That's true, yeah. Our linguist friend.
Our linguist friend.
Yeah, maybe we should make a comedic podcast about linguistics.
Yeah, if you want to go on a date with him, let me know.
Okay. We'll end it there, but in my research to find another question, I did find out that apparently the Americans made clear coke for some Russian general that defected after the USSR was dismantled.
Well, that's a sick fact.
I just skimmed that, so I'm not sure if any of that is correct. The guy might not even be Russian. But that's what he looked like in the picture.
But that's a good fact for you in your Query Corner.
That's a good fact. And while you guys are here, let's real quick.
While you're here.
Hey, chat, give me a good joke about the names of Aztec cities.
Ooh, I got one. How about this?
Ooh.
The Aztec city of Tenochtitlan was so magnificent, they say it was hard to pronounce, but easy to fall for. It's the original city with a name that's a mouthful.
What even is that?
No way, dog said,
Ooh.
as if he has a really good answer, then just said that.
He acted like he'd been waiting all his life to answer that, and that was the worst answer he could have given.
Chat's been charging up for that one.
Okay, dude, he could have just asked me why did the chicken cross the road, and that would have been way funnier. But back to Tenochtitlan, massive, incredible city, the capital of the Aztec Empire. They farmed in a really, really interesting way. They used these things called chinampas.
Mm.
Okay. And Chinampas are like floating gardens because
Yeah.
all of Tenochtitlan is built on a lake. It's on, I believe it's called Lake Texcoco, but I could be mistaking that for one right next to it. But the lake's drained now. Doesn't exist anymore. It's where Mexico City is.
Okay.
But the entire city is just built on a lake.
That's so sick.
Crazy, right?
I feel like, dude, like one of my favorite fantasy tropes that I
Uh-huh.
see in some like sci-fi and fantasy movies is cities that are like on the water,
Yeah.
whether it's like a lake or whatever. Like Brandon Sanderson, if you guys know who that is,
Mhm.
you probably do if you're listening to this podcast. But he has this thing, I can't remember what it's called, but there's this place in his world in this book he's writing where it's like this massive lake that's like hundreds of square miles large, like almost the size of an ocean basically.
Uh-huh.
But the entire thing's like 2 feet deep max.
That's cool.
And so people just live in it, and there's fish there, and like they live on these. Like,
So that's what's going on. I was about to say that. That was the next fact I was going to share. Is this lake is the entire thing is just a few feet deep.
Oh, okay. So
Yep.
it's like Brandon Sanderson's book.
Uh-huh.
That's so sick,
Yep. The Aztecs probably got their idea from him.
dude. That's just like what you, as like a kid, you're like, that'd be sick if I could do that.
And so what they do is they ride boats around like little rafts, and they have these poles they stick in to like
Hmm.
row and guide them around.
Yeah,
But just like so cool. And then whenever they're invaders, they would just pull up the bridge because it's just like on a lake, right? So
idiots.
and the image you can see if Blake puts a link to it,
Mm-hmm.
like there's one that shows what it would look like in the morning when the mist rises off the lake.
Mm.
But it's crazy because the whole city is just a lake, so it's just like mist everywhere.
Oh, that's so sick.
So
Is there
cool.
any places like that now that we could go build something?
I don't know, man.
Let's make
Hopefully.
one.
Okay,
Packed.
we can do that.
We gonna make
I'll
a
make that
thin
work.
lake and build on it.
Build Tenochtitlan too.
Keep sign up for our email, and we'll let you know when that happens.
But yeah, very, very powerful empire. The emperor you need to know, his name is Montezuma.
Okay.
Okay, Montezuma is going to be the emperor when the Spanish come and attack, which
Mm.
we'll be talking about in a second. Well, let's move down now to Peru
Okay.
and hit on the Incan civilization that is there. The Incan civilization is also very, very powerful because they're in Peru and in the Andes Mountains. They're up high on cliffs.
Mm-hmm.
Their capital city is called Cuzco.
Okay.
You may have heard of that from Emperor's New Groove.
Yeah.
That's the name of the
Clearly.
guy.
And also, just so, because I know a lot of people will get confused with, for some reason, more history students seems to get confused with American geography than they do with European geography.
Yep.
So just to be clear, when we're talking about the Aztecs, they are in.
Mexico. So
Mexico.
that's going to be Central America, which is part of North America.
Yeah, exactly. So they're in North America, and then
The Incans,
the Incans are in Peru, which is
South America.
South America.
South America.
Yes, and none of these are Mesoamerica.
No. Well, actually, the Aztecs are. Well, the Aztecs are kind of technically Mesoamerica because it's Central America.
Uh huh.
But I mean, Mesoamerica and Central America usually refer to the same thing, and they're both
Yeah.
part of North America. Complex stuff, but not really.
But not really.
One's in North America, one's in South
I mean,
America.
I
That
think
should make it
Mexico's
easy
still
for you.
North America. That's just my opinion. I think you only get to Central America once you get to like the
All the countries in between.
like the Panama Canal and stuff.
But you have also there's famous cities like Machu Picchu.
Mm.
If you ever heard of that, I know
Yeah.
a lot of people have been there. So that's an Incan city.
Mm-hmm.
They do their llama kind of thing. One interesting thing I found about them is they actually mummified their dead.
Oh,
So it's not Egypt only.
okay.
They did this as well.
And interesting because it's not like they would have received like. They would have saw Egypt posting about
No.
it, and they're like, "That's pretty lit. Let's try that." They just both
No.
came up with it.
Yeah. And like thousands of years apart too.
Yeah.
So really interesting.
Humans always just seem to come up with these things. Why is mummification in our genome somehow?
Why did we choose that? Why couldn't it be like build awesome race cars?
Yeah, like why didn't every country build a race car?
And they actually do some weird stuff with the mummies. They like bring them out for festivals,
Oh.
and so it's like kind of weird.
Well, at least they're taking advantage of it. The Egyptians like do all this preservation work, then just put them in a rock thing that you could never see them again. At least they're preserved, so now come check them out.
Well, and you have the high altitude, so it preserves them even better.
Oh, that's true.
So
Yeah.
still super gross, but like less gross than it might
It's
be.
like
if
the
you did it.
bodies in the Himalayas that are just there forever.
That's crazy, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to right as like the Spanish are arriving.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first, well, they come upon the city of Tenochtitlan,
Okay.
which is the capital of the Aztec Empire.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And this is the one on the water.
Yes.
Mhm.
They discover that the Aztecs are actually doing like massive, massive, massive amounts of human sacrifice. And so they write back to Europe, and we have all these documents of people just being like, yeah, and they did like tons of human sacrifice and all sorts of stuff like that. And it freaked all the Spanish out,
Oh.
right? They were doing like tens of thousands of people.
Oh.
and they have like walls with like skulls and stuff.
Oh, dang.
And so for the longest time in history, I don't know why we did this, but we were like, yeah, the Spanish were probably just like making it up. Like, there's no way they really did that many. And then like just a few years ago, we like found their wall of skulls they were talking about.
Oh.
Like, oh shoot, so they did for real do it.
Okay, well, I guess the Spanish were not lying. I think we just immediately assumed the Spanish were lying. Like, oh, they were Spanish? Okay. Yeah,
No way. But there was a lot of like, I mean, to be fair, there was a lot of propaganda against the natives later on when you get into wars and stuff like that. So they could have thought it was like a propaganda piece, but the Spanish really have no reason to like.
Hey, how about I take a propaganda at that booty?
The Spanish at this time have no reason. I'm just gonna let that pass.
Yeah, that's probably good.
The Spanish have no reason at this time to like even do propaganda because they kind of just like showed up. So there's no reason to like think they were lying. They just showed up and said, "Holy crap, this was going on," and then we're like, "No, probably not that."
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically that just shows you the pendulum of history and how it swings of where we used to think there was like tons of sacrifice, and then we thought there was actually no sacrifice, and now there's lots of sacrifice again.
Interesting. So. Yeah. Anything we say could change in tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. In tomorrow, it could change.
Tomorrow.
So now I'm going to go. I have a list of myths here that I wrote down from various books I've read or things that I've learned, and we're going to debunk all of them.
Okay, let's go.
The first one being it's known as the great man theory of history, where if you have ever, I'm gonna quiz you, Blake.
Okay.
Okay. And Blake, by the way, is a business major, so he is probably just your average Joe in terms of history knowledge.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more because he listens to me podcast.
Yeah. I mean, I've been doing this, and also my mom did love history, so she's always talking to me about it. So I'd say I know a little more.
But this is gonna be a hard quiz.
I knew what Jamestown was. I was the only one in the class when I took it that knew what Jamestown was. So
this could be a hard quiz.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
But do you know when you think of the Spanish conquering the Aztecs? What are some names you think of Spanish conquistadors?
I don't know of any names that come to mind in terms of Spanish conquistadors. I mean, I know Christopher Columbus.
Okay.
Everyone talks about him being like the devil himself.
Right.
Arriving in North America, sickening everyone, then killing them. But I can't think of any names of Spanish conquistadors.
Yeah, that's okay. Christopher Columbus, we won't even get into that. There's lots of stuff to go on over there. We can spend a whole episode on that. So I'll go ahead and skip that. But there's a guy that's usually known for being the one that conquered the Aztecs, defeated the Aztecs. His name is Hernan Cortez.
Okay.
Have you heard that name before? Maybe?
I've heard Cortez.
Okay, yep. So in a lot of old history books, it would basically be like Hernan Cortez walked in there with like a couple of troops and just like wiped out the whole city.
Oh, okay.
Okay. This is our number one really big myth. We have to remember that we can't be treating these Aztec peoples like they were just babies. Like they were kids. They couldn't put up a fight. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then we should also understand
they built a city on the water.
They could command tons of troops, like maybe up to like hundreds of thousands in an army.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So like very, very powerful.
We're talking Mongol levels here.
Yeah. Well, probably even bigger than the Mongol army for the most part.
We're talking Persian levels here.
Yeah, depending on how accurate those numbers are. Yeah, but just massive amounts of troops were being commanded here.
Okay.
We also need to remember that just because you're a certain race doesn't mean you act a certain way, right? So previous to the Spanish conquistadors coming over, the Aztecs have been terrorizing the little city-states around them.
Okay.
One of these, for example, is Texcoco, okay? Really close to Tenochtitlan. And if you're just like an average citizen in Texcoco, and you're trying to defend, like trying to fight for your life against the Aztecs, and then you see these other people come over that have these really good weapons, you're like, dude, hold on, we can take down our oppressors.
Okay, so this is like a Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace type moment where it's like there's always a bigger fish.
Yes, exactly.
These guys were the apex predators, and then the Spanish show up with guns. And it's like, or did they have guns at this point?
They did have guns, yep.
Okay, yeah.
And we're going to talk about how their guns are not super effective. The more effective thing was the steel swords.
Oh, okay.
But basically, the people of Texcoco are looking for allies to free them from their oppression, right?
Okay.
We need to stop thinking just because you're Native American, you're going to fight against the Spanish.
Oh.
Like, that's not at all what's going on,
Interesting.
right? You're going to fight against the people that have been, like, beating you, keeping you as their slaves, and killing your family, right? And so these people of Texcoco and a bunch of other indigenous peoples team up with the Spanish.
Okay.
Right? And so where you may have seen pictures of, like, Hernan Cortez and a few other Spanish people show up and on horses and just ride through the whole town.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a pretty evenly matched fight because they've got all their allies,
Oh, okay.
right? And then,
So this was actually just an incredibly politically opportune time for the Spanish to show up,
yes.
where they could just rally a bunch of other natives
Uh-huh.
to their side
Exactly.
to take on the Aztecs.
This is, I mean, the Aztecs are the first empire that's ever existed in Mesoamerica,
Okay.
right?
And everyone's like, well, we're not a big fan of this.
Yeah. Right. And so I think that's one of the major things that like people just get wrong about it. They think just the Spanish came in and because they had guns, it's just easy to wipe them out.
Mm.
Like there was a lot going on there.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. And so again, just to that theme of let's not treat people one way just because of their race,
Hmm.
right? You're going to act according to your best interests.
Yeah.
Another myth we can talk about. There's a book that's very, very popular called Guns, Germs, and Steel.
Mm.
You ever heard of this book?
I have not.
Okay. It was famous probably the generation before ours,
Okay.
but it was by this amateur historian, and he claimed those are the three major reasons that America was able to be conquered. Guns, germs, and steel.
Right.
I'm just going to tell you right now that guns are not a very effective tool, especially the ones the Spanish had.
Yeah.
Like when the British get machine guns later, like by all means, that's very effective.
Yeah.
But in the 1500s, not super effective.
Mm.
Have you ever like seen someone fire one of those old timey guns?
Yeah, I fired one actually.
Oh, no way.
I fired a 50 caliber black powder rifle.
Well, tell us the process of how that works.
Well, so basically, you're sitting there. This
Okay.
old dude comes up to you and says, "You want to fire this black powder rifle?" I mean, this is just my experience.
Okay.
And you go, "Yeah,"
Oh, sick.
because it's a black powder rifle, you know? And like you can be like, "Tally ho!" type beat. And so then he takes it and he's like, "All right, here we go." He puts some powder in it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, down the barrel. Gives a little tap.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you're like, okay. When we finna fire this thing,
Yep.
takes a little wadding thing, shoves that down with his long rod he just
Uh-huh.
pulled out of nowhere. You're
He
like,
just had it in his
You're
pocket.
like, okay, guess we shooting cotton. And he's like, not to worry. Takes out a little metal ball. Like, okay.
Uh-huh.
Puts that down there. Takes out his big stick again, stuffs it down. Pulls back the thing. He's like, okay, now go ahead and give it a shot. And you go, okay, sick. And you aim it. And it's, first of all, it's really heavy. Like, it's way heavier than it needs to be. You're like, surely they could have saved some weight here.
Uh-huh.
You aim it at the target. Massive cloud of smoke, first of all. You're like, wow, that was really loud. Like, unnecessarily so. And then you look and you're like, oh, I did not hit what I was aiming at. But it was a good time. And the guy's like, that was cool, huh? And you're like, that was actually pretty sick.
I do remember that. I lived next to Jamestown growing up. Is that
Uh-huh.
where you did it, at Jamestown?
No, I was just at like a shooting range.
Oh, no way.
This guy had a black powder rifle. He's like, you want to shoot this?
I lived next to Jamestown growing up. For anyone who cares about that, that's the first like English colony in America.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever you'd like get close, you'd hear like just this deafening like cannon fire. You're like,
They're really loud.
they are firing like it must be the biggest gun like in the world.
No, they're
and it's
like
just a
loud
gun.
for no reason. They're
It's
not even
just
that.
like-
They're not even that powerful.
So first of all, like if you're imagining 100,000 Aztecs running at you,
Mm-hmm.
if you can even like hit them, which
You're
is,
like out here like,
if your shot even like gets close to where it would hit,
mm-hmm.
then you got like 5 minutes to reload that puppy.
Yeah, I mean, you're better off with a bow. I'm
Yeah.
be honest, it's way faster to reload it.
Absolutely.
And with the like 60-pound draw weights they were doing back then, like probably the same armor piercing capabilities.
It'd be way more accurate too.
Yeah.
Yep. So the main way that the main weapon that the Spanish used against the Aztec Empire was just the steel sword.
Mm.
Because all the Aztecs have right now is they would use obsidian was their like hardest metal,
Mm-hmm.
but even that, I mean, stands no chance against the steel sword.
Yeah, I mean, obsidian is notoriously actually shatters pretty good.
Yep. So the guns just did not play as big of a part as you might think they would.
Hmm.
Another myth is the let's do this one real quick.
Okay.
The one that the Aztecs thought the Spanish were gods
Oh.
when they showed up.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of different theories and talk about this, but I would say that's just a general consensus thing you hear in school or around. Have you ever heard that myth before?
Oh yeah, 100%. I've heard people like, well, actually, the reason that they were conquered so easily is because they came to praise these individuals, and then they just started killing them. Which to me never made sense because like, why would the Spanish just show up and be like, yeah, let's kill these homies? You know, like they're coming to say hi.
The true story is actually more interesting. I read a book by a guy named Matthew Restall,
Okay.
and it's been a second. He's like the foremost scholar in just the Aztec world, and he talks about how Montezuma, the Aztec emperor, actually had a zoo.
Oh,
Okay, where he kept all sorts of things he could find in the zoo,
that's sick.
like anything he could possibly bring, like from far and wide. He was gathering it to his zoo, and so then he sees these white people show up. He's like, I've got the perfect idea.
Have I got the place for you? Now tell me this, as we're getting into this topic, were the white people game for this idea?
So this is actually a great question because the white people thought that they were just being put up in like the nicest penthouse of all time.
Well, it's big windows, man. You can really see out.
And he's just really curious. Now, we don't know if that's for sure the case, but that's this guy's theory, and it's like there's definitely some evidence to it.
And he's the leading historian on this topic. Okay.
So he knows a thing or two. I'm not just like
Yeah.
saying, well, someone thought this. This could have actually been the case.
This isn't like the amateur historian that wrote disease, metal, and whatever.
Yeah,
you just
guns,
said.
germs, and steel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if you were just your average like Spanish conquistador, you show up, and all of a sudden the emperor comes out to meet you himself. And then says, well, come stay right here, right next to me. And all the people come and they just are staring at you, being like, wow. Understandable why you might be like, well, maybe they think I'm a god.
Fair enough, dude. Yeah. I mean, hey, man. Slay.
But yeah, this is not the case. I mean, the Spanish did not think they were gods. Also, as soon as you see like a Spanish dude like stub his toe or like get hurt at all or start bleeding, then immediately the myth is gone. Also, even if they did think that.
These guys probably, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of historical cross-ocean travel, they were not coming off this boat smelling fresh and looking good.
No.
Like, they may have had scurvy. They were sweating.
Yep.
They hadn't showered in months.
Right. Another myth I want to talk about, too, is just the idea that they could not communicate with each other at all, and we're kind of just, like, trying to figure things out, and sometimes we treat the Spanish or the Aztecs, like I was saying, like toddlers, where they just don't understand anything the Aztecs are saying.
Yeah.
This is not the case at all. Cortez actually took one of the Aztec like young women as his wife, and she was able to translate. Her name is Malinche.
Okay.
She's very, very famous. One of the
Kind
most
of Pocahontas situation.
ish, yeah. Except I don't know of this case, but I believe that Cortez was already married, so she was just kind of like a mistress kind of thing. But they actually could communicate pretty well. I mean, obviously not right away, but they figured it out in not too long. Last important one that I want to talk about is we like to think that the Aztecs were kind of just like bystanders in the whole event, that they really didn't want to be conquered on. They were just being forced into this way or forced into that way, and we just should feel really bad for them.
Yeah.
Obviously, there was like a lot of bad things that happened and crimes, and people were taken over and people were oppressed. But the truth of it is that if you're an average like Aztec farmer and you're being ruled by the Aztec emperor pretty harshly, and then the Spanish come in and through conquest or whatever, they take over, you're still just on your farm, okay? Except now you've got a steel hoe instead of a wooden hoe.
Oh.
So you're actually pretty happy about it.
Sick.
And so a lot of the common people actually enjoyed the Spanish conquest. They liked it. And a lot of times we think, like, can you believe these white conquistadors were so evil and brutal and they just, like, tortured everyone? Like, really, if you're the average citizen on your farm, like, not a lot has changed except now you have better technology.
Really?
Yeah.
It's just who your ruler just changed.
Yep, your ruler just changed.
Interesting.
And so...
And they didn't kill everyone? Because I feel like that's what I hear a lot. It's like they came...
Yeah, no, they did not kill everyone. Yeah, that is a common myth. Yeah, they didn't kill everyone. Now, the one thing that may change your life is disease. And disease was pretty bad. There's a new study that comes out every other year where it changes if we think disease was actually as bad as we thought or not quite as bad as we thought.
Okay.
But disease was pretty bad. And that may change your life if like someone in your family got sick or something like that, because the Native American bodies were just not able to withstand some of the European diseases.
Right.
But for the most part, if you're just the average Aztec person or average Native American person, life doesn't change that much, except it gets better, right? Because now you have better technology.
Interesting.
And I think a lot of times we don't just think about that aspect of life.
Yeah.
Right. But there's a lot of the. Have you ever heard any other myths that we didn't go over, or things that you are just curious about?
I can't remember because a lot of the myths I've heard, just being uninformed in history. I'm not sure if they're talking about Columbus or the conquistadors because both technically came from Spain, right?
Right.
Columbus was funded. His venture was funded by Spain, but I know I've heard that people talk about the ancient Americans, they had all this incredible technology, incredible cities, and they just came and destroyed it all. Like they destroyed their floating city, they destroyed this stuff. That's what I've heard. I don't know if that's true.
No, that is true. I mean, the Spanish conquistadors do destroy Tenochtitlan when they conquer it, but I don't know if they're like actively. I mean, there is some definite like purposeful destruction of different Aztec temples and stuff like that, but they're doing it out of a place of, we believe that the Christian God is the right God. And so we're going to destroy your Aztec temple and then we're going to build a Christian temple on top of it.
Oh, okay.
Right? And so it's not like we're just killing to kill, but we're killing one because we do want the resources that are there. And if you're standing in the way of us getting the resources, we're going to kill you.
Right.
And also the major effort wasn't actually to kill. The major effort was to convert. To convert to Christianity.
Interesting.
Right.
And then they also had all the other tribes with them helping to do that.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so it's not as much like, very different than the Mongols. The Mongols were killing to kill. 100%, right?
If you remember that episode.
The Spanish conquistadors are not just killing to kill.
Okay.
So, I mean, that is true to an extent, but also, I mean, they're going to rebuild the cities and they're going to have nicer buildings that the Aztecs are going to live in.
Okay.
Right.
Interesting.
Because it's not like the Aztecs just go away. Like if you go to Mexico, everyone there is not white. They're still Native American people, you know?
Right.
So we'll just do a quick review, and that's all the information.
All right.
Let's talk about real quick just Teotihuacan. We went over that. That was the proto-Aztec kind of building. We talked about this lots in the past, but it influenced the Aztec Empire, influenced a lot of the Mesoamerican empires around that area.
Right.
You have Tiwanaku and Wari, which are also city-states, just like Teotihuacan was, but this one's down in South America, in Peru. They're the precursors to the Incan empires. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but there was a period of, I guess you'd call it hegemony. Have you heard the word hegemony before?
No.
I just learned it this year, but it's really useful.
Okay.
It's kind of when one city-state has cultural dominance over others.
Okay.
They're kind of like the big guy on the block.
But everyone's influenced by them.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. And so it's kind of like Sparta and Athens in Greece.
Right.
Right. So Tiwanaku and Wari have hegemony, and they create it through trade.
Okay.
So because they're trading with other people so much, they just have, it's like tariffs 1 million kind of thing.
Tariffs 1 million.
Sorry, that's a touchy topic right now.
But tariffs 1 million could be lit. That sounds cool.
Yeah. So that's what they retain their hegemony through trade. We have the Incan Empire. The capital is Cuzco, down in Peru. This is going to come over top of Tiwanaku and Wari. Like Tiwanaku is going to become one of the Incan cities.
Okay.
And they're going to, I mean, we talked about those mummies. They're up high in the mountains, that kind of thing. They are an empire. And then we'll go back to Mesoamerica with the Aztecs. All the human sacrifice, first of all, that they did, lots of it. And then the conquest, just all those myths are you're not going to need to remember any of those myths specifically, but hopefully it at least changed your perspective on the Aztec conquest of the New World. The Spanish conquest of the Aztecs. So
interesting. Well, that's it for this week's dorm room history.
That's it.
We just covered a lot of stuff about America. This is America.
This is America.
So who knows what I'll title this episode? Maybe This is America. But if not, then
I wonder if you get like an AI image of like Childish Gambino in like a Aztec headdress or something.
I'm gonna have to check that out. I don't know. We'll see what we can do. If anyone's got good ideas, put it in the comments below. But I'm gonna call it what I call it. Yeah. But thank you guys for tuning in again. We really appreciate all the support we've been getting from you guys. Maybe I'll pull up to class at some point.
Whoa.
That could
celebrity.
Be just a guest appearance.
Yeah, everyone's always like, dude, who's the other guy you have on the podcast? Like, dude, he's just my friend.
It's true. For them, he's like some random homie. Yeah.
Cool.
So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, wait. Song.
Oh, yeah.
Flint and steel, chicken jockey.